Hey there, it's Lara here. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast, otherwise known as Witchy Wednesday. This one is for the week of October 28th to November 5th, 2020. Thanks for being here. I'm going to start right off the bat by apologizing for if you hear a bit of a scratchy voice. I'm super tired. I was up for several hours in the middle of the night, haven't been sleeping well lately, and I'm sure some of you can relate. This is my second full take of this video. I had almost finished it, and then the camera cut off. So I'm kind of hoping that I get everything in here that I got in the first video, because there was a lot of stuff that I relayed. So hopefully I don't forget any of it. But having said that, we are talking about this really electrifying full moon that's happening on October 31st, right? Halloween, Samhain, in the sign of Taurus. So you may have heard that this is called a blue moon, right? And that just means it's the second full moon in a month. So October began with a full moon, and it's ending with a full moon as well. This does not happen all that often, hence the phrase a blue moon. The last time we happened to have a blue moon specifically on Halloween was way back in 1944. So, that doesn't happen very often. And then we also had full moons on Halloween in 2001 and then in 1955. Even a full moon, let alone a blue moon, doesn't happen on Halloween all that often. The next one isn't scheduled till 2039. Scheduled, right? 2039. So just to give you a sense of that. And what makes this one particularly unique, which is a good word to use in this case, is that it is in a very, very tight conversation with Uranus, right? Uranus, the disruptor. And so we're going to talk about that in this video at length. This full moon happens specifically at 10:49 a.m. Eastern Time. On October 31st, and it is at 8 degrees of Taurus, where Uranus will also be at this time. And of course, across the sky from the sun at 8 degrees in Scorpio, Taurus is opposite sign, because the sun and the moon are always opposite each other at the time of a full moon, right? So today, as I'm recording this, the moon has moved from Pisces to Aries. And so as the moon moves through Aries over the next couple of days, she will come into contact with Chiron, Mars retrograde, and eventually Eris, right? But she will make a square as she moves through Aries to the planets in Capricorn. So Asteroid Pallas, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, right, in Capricorn. And so we're getting a square as a conversation of tension. And so this tension is what's leading us into the full moon that's happening on the weekend. And so the moon will move out of Aries on Friday and into Taurus, and then on Saturday we'll have that full moon, and then she will eventually on Monday move into Gemini, right, and then later like next Wednesday into Cancer. So I'm going to show you the chart right away, and then we'll get down to business, talk about all of this. So here's the chart, right, for the upcoming full moon. So there's the moon down there in the sign of Taurus at 8 degrees, and right beside, see, at 8 degrees is Uranus. So before the moon gets there, like I said, she's just into Aries now. She'll hit Chiron, Mars retrograde, Eris, then Lilith, who's at 1 degree Taurus, and eventually meet up with Uranus. And across the sky is the sun in Scorpio at 8 degrees. There's asteroid Juno a little bit further off there, but not too far off at 13 degrees Scorpio. And then, of course, we've got the planets up here in Capricorn, right? We've got Pallas Athena, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. Saturn happens to be in an exact square to Mercury at the time of this full moon as well. And Eris is still in this square with Pluto, right? Within a 1-degree square of Pluto. And we've talked about that before. So those are the pieces of the puzzle I wanted to share with you. We have Venus in Libra at the time of the full moon. Mercury is retrograde and about to station direct on U.S. Election Day on November 3rd. We've touched on that a little bit in the past, in last week's video, I believe. So we won't belabor that here, except to say that these are exciting, interesting times. This week is you're probably sick of hearing me saying this, but it's quite intense. All right. So, before I forget, I want to say, if you are somebody who marks the Wheel of the Year, then you will know, or if you're somebody who wants to learn about it, on October 31st, we have what most of us know as Halloween, but Samhain or Samhain, depending on how you pronounce it, on where you're from. But this is actually New Year's Eve on the Wheel of the Year. November 1st marks the new year, right? The beginning of that cycle. And it's interesting because to pagans, right, ancient Celtic peoples, they marked this time as the beginning rather than the ending. So if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it seems an awful lot like an ending, doesn't it? When the leaves are mostly all off the trees now. We even have some snow on the ground here where I am. Things are dying off. And animals are going into hibernation, right? It seems like an ending, but the darkness is where things begin. You've heard me say this before. And so, it is it's very much a transitional state that we're in. And even if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you will be, experiencing the opposite, which is the coming into spring, Beltane on the Wheel of the Year. And so it's still a transition, right? It's a major transition. And that's where we're at in Scorpio season. It's this transitioning, this transformation that's going on. And so, if you're interested in marking the occasion, then there's all kinds of information on the internet you can find out. I often post things that I don't necessarily cover here in these videos on Facebook and Instagram, so you can join me there if you're interested. All right. So happy Samhain, happy Halloween. And let's get down to it, right? I showed you the chart. So a full moon is always when the sun and the moon are opposite the sky each other. And it's this time of release, of culmination, of insight, of catharsis, this sort of thing, right? Information sort of sometimes coming to light. It's a turning point sometimes, a crisis point, all of these words fit when we're talking about a full moon. And the full moon is always in some way connected to the new moon that happened 2 weeks prior. So in this case, that was in Libra. So you can think back, what sort of got off the ground a couple of weeks ago, or what seeds were planted there, and where am I at in that process or in that unfolding. But even more so, look back about 6 months to April 22nd, 23rd, depending where you live, where we had the new moon in Taurus, right? Which was the beginning of this lunar cycle kind of thing. So the new moon in Taurus in April also was in a close conversation with Uranus. It was within about 3 degrees of Uranus, and it was squaring Saturn. So this new moon is not, or this full moon, is not squaring Saturn, but Saturn's squaring Mercury at the time of the full moon as well. And Uranus is in like I showed you, a very close conversation, right? So, and the other interesting thing is at the time of that new moon, Saturn, who was in a square to that new moon, was actually in Aquarius. It had just moved into Aquarius for a short stay before tipping back into Capricorn for, to take care of some unfinished business. So Saturn sort of if you think of Saturn in one way, to describe Saturn as, the sort of wise teacher, and the teacher who wants us to study for the test and, make sure that we are doing the work. So Saturn went into Aquarius and sort of gathered intel, right? Like got a sneak peek, and maybe slipped us a cheat sheet under the table and was like, you need this for the exam. So hopefully you hung on to to that cheat sheet. So anyway, it's interesting because there are some definite connections between whatever transpired, whatever was beginning and being initiated around the time of that new moon, around April 22nd, 23rd. And globally, you can look back and see what was going on then, but you can also look back in your own personal life and see, right? What is this connected to? So this is like the leveling up of whatever that was, right? The release point. The pressure valve is coming off, that sort of thing. And with Uranus there, it's anybody's guess as to what that's going to look like. So first, let's talk a little bit about Taurus, because Taurus is where this full moon, is happening, right on October 31st. So Taurus is a fixed earth sign. And the key phrase for Taurus is I have, right? Because Taurus is very concerned with what it has and what it needs to hold on to, because Taurus likes stability and security, and it's all about, our survival needs and getting our basic needs met. Things like food and shelter and money that we need to get the things that, for us to survive. It's about our relationship to the physical world, including our bodies very much. And it's connected to the concepts of sort of, I said survival already, but resilience as well. And if you think about it in real world terms, if we don't have our basic needs met, nothing else really matters. That's our focus, right? Is surviving. And so if we don't have food and shelter and clothing and these kinds of things, or means to the money in this day and age to get those things, then we are not in a very comfortable position, and not feeling very secure, right? So Taurus is connected to all those things. Taurus is ruled by the planet Venus, who also rules Libra, but Taurus is Venus, is about our relationships and beauty and aesthetic. It's very much also about our resources and our values, right? Which are two things that Taurus is concerned about. And the moon is actually exalted in Taurus. So the moon is very comfortable in the sign of Taurus. It's like when Taurus hosts the moon, he's a really good host. So the moon is like, can breathe a sigh of relief, get comfortable, put the fuzzy slippers on, get some snacks, watch some Netflix, this kind of thing, is how the moon in Taurus feels, right? Have some yummy food, wrap itself in a cozy blanket, all of that. And so the moon generally likes to be in Taurus. However, and Taurus is this sense of stability and security and all of that. Uranus, on the other hand, is like, nope, I'm going to shake things up. Uranus is not one for safety and security and status quo. Uranus, like the lightning bolt, the sudden change, the sudden flash of genius or insight, the sudden information. Uranus really wants to liberate us from things. There's this sense of craving freedom, or maybe, rebelling as well with Uranian energy. Uranus is very much connected to the sense of like our nervous system and that sort of web, or the internet, right? The World Wide Web as well, and how that works. So here's the moon in Taurus at the time of this full moon, kicking back, relaxing, or that's at least what she is expecting, because that's usually what happens, all things being equal. And but then there's Uranus. So think of it like this. Moon's relaxing in Taurus. All of a sudden, I get this image of, if you ever watched Seinfeld, of Kramer, right? Throwing the door open and announcing himself, wild-eyed. And did you know that, there's some crazy piece of information that he has, some crazy story, some weird request, some shocking news, or some absurd, something absurd. He's wearing some absurd outfit. And it's like, the moon is like, what? You're disturbing the peace here. I don't like it, but you can't really get rid of him. He's gonna stay and tell you, right? I also connect Uranus to the image of the scientist guy in Back to the Future, right? Dr. Emmett Brown. So Christopher Lloyd in Back to the Future. So he's kind of that crazy scientist guy, who's wild-eyed and crazy hair and, full of wild insights and information and electrifying, that sort of thing, right? That's Uranus. So Uranus is coming so close to the moon, like right on top of the moon in this full moon scenario, that we can be damn sure that there's going to be something that transpires that shakes things up, right? That can be quite exciting. It can be shocking. It can be disruptive. It can be liberating. It can be, it can rattle our cages. So, and this all depends, when we're talking about on a personal level, this shakeup will happen in accordance with the details of your own birth chart, but in the area of life that Taurus sits, right? And to varying degrees for all of us, depending on how closely impacted or personally impacted we are by this. But we'll definitely see things going on in the world around this time. I mean, we're already kind of seeing that, right? And we're in that, like, now that the moon has entered Aries, like I said, the tension is building. Okay, so, and one other thing I wanted to say is, again, Taurus is this fixed earth energy. Uranus is shaking things up. The moon brings things into our awareness. Full moon in particular, there could even be some kind of like literally earth shaking, right? Event that transpires. So we've got, the moon in Taurus, like I said, trying to relax. In comes, Kramer, Uranus, with the throwing the door open, surprise. And then there's the sun across the sky in Scorpio, right? The deep, dark waters of Scorpio, saying, look, I know you're trying to relax over there, and now you got this disruption, but there's some stuff you really need to take care of. There's some stuff you really need to look at and to know, and it may be messy, and it might be uncomfortable, and it might be hard to escape. It might be intense. It might involve some kind of power struggles or skeletons coming out of the closet, potentially, but you really need to address this, right? It's not going anywhere. So, and then the sun is conjunct Juno, and there's also a couple of other asteroids related to, the feminine principle in some way, shape, or form that are close there that I'm not going to get into. I don't really know much about them, but and we've got Lilith and Eris implicated here too, right? Eris square Pluto, Lilith, the moon will hit Lilith, who is also in Taurus now before the full moon. So all that to say that there is this emphasis, I think, as well on the feminine principle and potentially issues around, women's rights. I mean, no, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know if you've been paying any attention to what's going on in the world right now. But that is not going anywhere. That's not going anywhere. It's going to be a signature energy of this time period. surrounding this full moon and beyond. So, I don't remember if I already said this to you because, again, take two, right? But the last blue moon we had, which is the second full moon in a month, was in 1944. Blue moon on Halloween specifically was way back in 1944. So, you know, relatively rare. Now, I want to spend the rest of the time going through the signs. Hopefully you're going to listen to the introduction, because if you don't, you're not really going to have the full picture here, right? And we're going to use this analogy of sort of, you know, the mad scientist or Kramer sort of throwing open the door because I think it works. So as we're going through each sign, which we're going to take a look at when we're doing these general forecasts, we're looking at rising sign first and foremost, right? Or ascendant. They mean the same thing for our purposes here. So if you know your rising sign or your ascendant sign, listen to that first and foremost. You know, because unless I'm looking at your chart specifically, I don't know what house your sun is sitting in, right? But you can also listen for your sun and your moon sign, because that will give you added layers of information here, definitely. And when we're talking about this full moon particularly in Taurus, on a personal level, again, look back 6 months to around April 22nd, 23rd, what was transpiring for you then, see how it might be connected. And it will be directly related to the themes of the house that Taurus sits in, which we're getting to. But there will be this element of, you know, the full moon, culmination, fruition, catharsis, release, all of those full moon ideas and concepts. But there's going to be some sort of excitement surrounding that, or shock, or surprises, or urge for freedom, you know, that kind of thing. So we'll try to marry those concepts as we go through each sign, and I'll try to give you an example of what that might look like. All right, so we're going to start with Taurus. Oh, incidentally, if you have planets, points, you know, anything important going on or significant going on around the 8th degree of Taurus, give or take a few degrees on either side, or the other fixed signs, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, then you're likely to feel the impact of this full moon on a more kind of personal level, right? All right, so we're going to start with Taurus, because Taurus, this is happening in your first house. So this is very personal for you, because it's all about yourself, your physical body and well-being, your vitality, your the way you present yourself to the world, the way the world perceives you, your instinctual response to new experiences, you know, to the world, that sort of thing. And so this could be something, you know, for example, like you are going to, you're completely changing your appearance, and it's going to be quite shocking or potentially disruptive or surprising, or a bit eccentric even. This could be some sort of, I mean, you know, quite literally think of like a sort of crazy Halloween costume, right? But so it could be as simple as that, I suppose, that people are not really expecting. One thing I would say, without, you know, trying to scare you, is just be mindful of your physical body and not doing anything risky, you know, that you might injure yourself. Like if you're making dinner and you're chopping onions or whatever, just, you know, don't get distracted, that sort of thing. So, or it could be like even something where you're, say, you know, you've been working on a website, and which is a reflection of your personal self, right? And so you're launching it out into the world, right? Think that connection with Uranus and the internet, and putting yourself out there, being in the first house. And it could be, you know, this big announcement, and it could be maybe surprising, or it could just have to do with, you know, technology and the internet, that sort of thing. So, okay, that's for you, Taurus. Definitely listen to the introduction. Next, we're going to move on to Aries. So, Aries, for you, the full moon is culminating in your second house, right? And this is related to, well, first of all, Taurus is at home in the second house. So think about those Taurus themes. In some ways, there's a similar thread, right, that runs through Taurus and the second house. So the second house is about how we get our needs met. It's about our personal resources, our money, our time, our energy, how we use our skills and talents to get what we need, right? It's about what we value and place value on, and our core values, and it's very much about our own sense of self-worth as well. So these life themes are what's being highlighted for you at the time of this full moon. And Uranus is going to throw open the door, right? Like Kramer, like we talked about, and go, surprise. Here's a piece of news that is surprising and directly related to those second house themes. So what could this look like? This could be like some sort of windfall, maybe like a check you weren't expecting, or it could be, oh, you didn't pay your taxes. Here's a reminder. Or it could be like a real shakeup in what you value. And it could even be as simple as sort of some kind of wild news about, food in some way. Like, you get some information that like you have a food allergy you didn't know that you had. Or there could be like, let me think about what else this could be. Something happens that initiates or is some sort of cathartic moment that has to do with your sense of self-worth, right? And how you value yourself as well. So, I mean, there's many different scenarios this could be, but it has that Uranian quality to it, right? And then that full moon sort of illumination or fruition or culmination or release as well, energy about it. So that's for you, Aries. Next, we've got Pisces, where the full moon is happening in your third house. So for you, Pisces rising, Pisces sun, Pisces moon, but for you, this is some, potentially liberating, cathartic moment, some shock and awe, some, because it's the third house in particular, some wild and crazy, exciting piece of information that has to do with people in your immediate environment, right? That's the third house. It's whatever's circling around you kind of thing. So it can have to do with people like cousins, neighbors, siblings, community members, teammates. It can have to do with your communications, right? Messages exchanged back and forth. It can have to do with commerce and marketing, mobility, usually of like sort of the short distance kind of variety, but the concept of mobility falls into the third house. Also, learning, right? Any kind of early childhood learning, elementary learning, or learning the basics even, that sort of foundational learning. So this is, some kind of like I was saying to you, some piece of information maybe that's a missing piece of the puzzle, or shocking, or really unexpected, can come to you at this time. Or there's some kind of enlightening conversation that happens, or a conversation that sort of rattles your cage a bit even. That kind of thing could potentially transpire. So third house themes are what's lit up for you. Next, we're going to move to Aquarius, where Aquarius, you've got the full moon in your fourth house, right? So shining this light in the area of life that has to do with your literal place of living, like real estate, your home, right? But also family, roots, ancestry, oftentimes the mother and the mother's lineage, your female tribe in a sense, or more feminine kind of, the more feminine nurturing figures in your life, that sort of thing. Also, your sense of emotional security, right? So for you, Aquarius, something is happening here with Uranus, right? Kramer's throwing open the door and he's like, oh, we got an offer on the house. Say you're selling your house, for example, or your landlord says you got to move, or your mom has some surprising information for you, or you're going to do like a big overhaul to your house, like, and it's going to look totally different than it did before, with Uranus there, right? Your sense of sort of emotional security can be rattled a little bit, or there's something quite liberating and freeing that happens in this fourth house area. So that's for you, Aquarius. Next, we're moving to Capricorn, where we've got the full moon lighting up your fifth house. So for you, Capricorn, right, this fifth house has to do with children, your children or other people's children, just children in general, right? It has to do with anything you create, your creative projects, your sense of creative self-expression, sort of shining your light out into the world as an individual. It has to do with what sparks joy for you, right? Like, how do you have fun in life? What brings you pleasure? And so with the full moon conjunct Uranus here, is like Kramer throwing open the door and going, surprise, some event, like your kid just won an award, or, some other kind of unexpected piece of information regarding your kid or children, in general, or pregnancy even, surprise. It could also be something that feels liberating, in relation to how you have fun. So doing something unexpected in that regard, or, your fun is somehow impacted by some surprising, shocking event. So you can see how we can kind of marry all these themes, right? The energy of the full moon, the Uranus piece, and then the life areas that are directly impacted for you if you're a Capricorn rising specifically, but also to a lesser degree sun and moon in this case, right? So that's for you, Capricorn. Next, we're moving to Sagittarius. Sagittarius, this is lighting up your sixth house. So this has to do with issues around health, wellness, illness, your routines and habits on the day-to-day, right? Your work, whether that be paid or unpaid, so job related sometimes, relationships of unequals. So like employee-employer, I always use that example. Most of us can relate to that in some way. It can have to do with pets. So, there is something being illuminated, coming to fruition, coming to a culmination, catharsis point. And there is a twist, right? A shocking twist. And, Kramer's throwing the door open, wild-eyed, and saying, your pet's been missing. We found it. I'm just using that example because I can relate. Or it could be like some shocking information about health and wellness. It doesn't have to be bad, right? It could be surprising. There could be some unexpected event at work that happens, or work related, or related to some sort of employee-employer kind of dynamic, right? Your daily routines could be really shaken up, or you could be liberated in some way from the daily grind, right? So those kinds of things can transpire. Moving on to Scorpio, where the full moon is illuminating your seventh house. And for you, this is all about your close personal relationships, right? Those one-to-one relationships, your significant other, close family members and friends, business associates. It also has to do with contracts and agreements. And so something is coming to fruition, coming to light, being released potentially, all those full moon concepts. But it has this Uranian surprise energy associated with it, right? Where Kramer's throwing the door open and, surprise, and maybe it's like, I don't know, your significant other has some exciting news or some shocking, surprising news, or, there is some twist of fate in relation to a contract or an agreement. Some surprising news in relation to that, just in the arena of your relationships and relating to others in general. So that's for you, Scorpio. Next, we have Libra. Libra, for you, it's the 8th house that the full moon is illuminating, right? And so these are themes that have to do with your entanglement with other people, the resources that you share with other people. So things like your taxes and your mortgage and your debt and your insurance and even loans and bursaries and that sort of thing. Money that comes to you through clients, potentially even your spouse's resources. But this is also very much about this whole idea of transformation and the cycle of death and rebirth, right? Transmutation, transformation, and that which is occulted or hidden, right? And the skeletons that we like to keep in the closet sometimes. But anyways, so for you, Libra, this is like there is some sort of liberating, energy around this, shocking, surprising, something that rattles your cage in relation to these 8th house themes, right? That is the news. It's around those themes that Kramer's busting in with news about that kind of thing. So that's for you. And next we've got Virgo, where Virgo, the full moon is illuminating your 9th house. I don't know why I have to look at my notes for this because I'm a Virgo rising. So this is me, right? Anyway, the 9th house has to do with teaching, learning, usually of like the sort of higher minded variety, or like, things past the basics. It can have to do with publishing or getting your word out, right? It has to do very much with your philosophy, your belief system, your worldview, what we learn from foreign people and places, sometimes foreign travel, foreign cultures, this kind of thing, right? And so the full moon is culminating there, and it's bringing a twist of fate, surprises, maybe some exciting, liberating information, or a sudden change of, how you view the world based on some shocking information that's come in, that sort of thing, right? So that's kind of what's being lit up for you. Those are the themes. And keep in mind everything that was talked about in the intro, because that all plays a role. All right, next we've got Leo. So for you, Leo, the full moon is illuminating your 10th house of your career, the legacy you wish to leave, your public reputation and persona, your relationship to authority and authority figures, including your own authority. And so something is culminating, releasing, there's something cathartic happening, something coming to light, and it's got a bit of a surprise quality to it because of the close presence of Uranus, right? And so it could be anything from a job offer you didn't see coming, some recognition in terms of your career and your public status, some twist of fate there potentially. Kramer's busting in with some news about this area of life for you around this time. So that's for you, Leo. Next, we've got Cancer. Cancer, for you, the full moon is happening in your 11th house of the group, of your friendship groups, clubs, associations, networks, the people that are walking the same path as you, the people that can help you get you where you want to go, that are talking the same talk as you. It has to do with the collective in general, right? Sometimes humanitarian pursuits. Sometimes it has to do with our hopes and dreams for the future. And so for you, Cancer rising, but also sun and moon, there is this surprise quality to the full moon, right? Because of Uranus in relation to these 11th house themes. So maybe surprise news from a friend or about a friendship group or some kind of association that you're connected to, or some twist of fate in relation to your hopes and dreams for the future, right? That may be quite liberating or exciting or shocking or electrifying, that sort of thing. All right. And last but not least, we have Gemini. So Gemini, for you, this is happening in your 12th house. And so this is like a tucked away from the world house, right? A hidden house. It has to do with how we spend time in rest and relaxation and recovery and solitude. It has to do with our sometimes what we call our self-undoing. So those bad habits, how we sabotage ourselves. It can have to do with our spirituality. It can have to do with, and our wellness, our mental and spiritual wellness. It can have to do with, places that are tucked away from the world, like hospitals and hospices and prisons and rehab facilities and spiritual retreat centers and all of that kind of thing, right? Just how we are tucked away from the world somehow. And so with a full moon happening there is some sort of cathartic event or release or culmination or illumination of something in relation to these themes. And it can have quite a shocking quality to it because of the presence of Uranus, or an exciting quality or a liberating quality to it because of Uranus, right? And so listen to the introduction to lay the groundwork, right? And to give you some context here. All right, so that's all 12 signs. I want to say to you, I hope this next week, brings, I hope the excitement is good, but I mean, I think we know that we're going to see some crazy happenings. Keep your feet on the ground. That's what Taurus would want you to do. Take comfort in the simple pleasures. That's what Taurus would want you to do. Grounding and just take care of your physical well-being. All right, as best you can. And if you have something extra to give to allow others to take care of their survival needs, then I encourage you to do that as well. All right, take good care, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.